is here. We are redefining what it means to sit at the girls' table. Hello, Bec. Welcome to the girls' table. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. I've been excited to join you here.
Of course. Thank you so much for joining. And for those of you who don't know Bec is really an all-star in the Web3 space. She is starting Clutch Wallet. She is the co-founder of that. And Bec, I would just love if you could quickly introduce yourself as well.
Sure, yeah. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Clutch Wallet, which I've been working on for the last year. I spend a lot of time on TikTok. I spend a lot of time creating crypto content on TikTok. And I'm based out of LA at the moment.
Awesome, and I can't wait to see you around.
Yeah, you're close by.
Yeah, so I just want to start off maybe like, what did you want to be when you grew up? Like, obviously right now I look at you, you're successful, you're running a company. So was that always your goal to be a founder?
No, this is such a funny question because I haven't been asked this for so long. I think when I was younger, when I was younger, I wanted to be a ballerina. I wanted to be a ballerina, and then I found out pretty quickly that like you had to have a certain frame and like you had to get to a certain level by a certain age. And at 12, I was like, oh, I'm not really making the level. I need to change this up. And then I think I switched to like acting, which I did for a while in high school. And then it kind of moved into like banking and finance as I graduated from high school. And I think just kind of like watching my dad work at the bank and having kind of internships there and just starting to make sense of the world with regards to wealth and money and finance and the kind of value that had. But even still then, like I never wanted to be a founder. So this is kind of more in the last 3 years that it's come about.
So funny because I also did acting in high school, like had an agent, went around. I'm like, that's amazing. I don't hear that often. So
I was like, I kind of think as well, like there's like when I was younger and doing it, my parents were definitely like getting a little kickback from that too. And so was I. But I definitely was like, hey, this is a business for both of us, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. Except mine wasn't successful and yours sounds way more successful than my acting days. So that's amazing. So obviously, like, then what happened? Like, what made you officially decide, like, hey, wait, I think I want to be a founder and I want to start something?
Yeah, I went through, like I said before, I was kind of in the banking space as I came out of high school and university. I studied finance and banking and business. And then I also did some studies in leadership while I was at university. So I think that leadership part of me definitely started to develop, but I more thought that would be coming into another business and, you know, running things at some kind of management level. As I had that leadership experience at university, I ran like what is it called? Where you live like a campus. I ran like a campus where there was 300 and something students for 2 years. And so that was like my first touch into leadership. And I think I still wasn't really like at the founding point then, but then, got into banking, got into crypto, spent 3 years in crypto and got to the point last year where I guess I started coming up with so many ideas and I started kind of, you know, thinking about what skill sets I had developed around leadership and started feeling like, okay, I'm feeling like a bit more comfortable that maybe this is something that I could just kind of like trial. So always kind of led in with that mindset. But yeah, the founding kind of idea was already in the last year or so.
And was there any type of feeling when you're like, you knew Clutch was the thing that you wanted to spend your time on? Or was it really just, you knew you wanted to be a founder, it sounded awesome to build something, so founder first, mission second?
It was definitely mission first. So I remember working with, I knew I wanted to work on a business. I didn't think I was necessarily going to be like the founder of that business. My co-founder, James, I've been working with for quite some time now, maybe like 5 or 6 years. We met together at the bank in Australia and then he got into crypto. He was one of the people that introduced me to crypto. And so I've been working with him on just like consulting gigs and he kind of got me into some of my early stage jobs in the Web3 space. And then we were always just like toying around with ideas. Like, you know, what if we built a business around like incentivized education with some kind of token model and we would start working on that for a couple of weeks and then we would kind of lose gas and be like, nah, that's not it. And so we'd have like a couple of these different types of projects and we'd rope people in. And as that was happening, like it was often men around me. And so I just never thought like, oh, I will be the founder at this point. I'll just be like the person that's doing marketing or sales or, you know, someone that's more in the operations space. And it wasn't until, the idea for Clutch started forming, that I was like, oh, I really want to be a founder of this. Like, this is so aligned with what I care about, which is like women's access to funding and just like financial autonomy. And then in the crypto space, it's like the combination of something that has been so mission kind of aligned for me, and then in an industry that I'm so passionate about now coming together. And yeah, that was, I guess, where the foundership was born.
Yep. And I guess for people who don't know, could you touch a little bit on what Clutch Wallet is?
Yeah, for sure. So Clutch is a non-custodial social wallet. I think the cryptocurrency wallet space to date has been quite one-dimensional in terms of it's very transactionally focused. There's something about the crypto experience when you're coming in, which is this experience with like education and keeping yourself up to date and really kind of diving into down the rabbit hole, whatever you want to say. That's like one part of the experience. I think the other is the social, which is joining communities, engaging in social content, joining DAOs, having social tokens. And then the other is obviously the kind of transactional investing space. And so we started thinking about like the wallet onboarding problem and what an experience in a wallet could look like. And that's kind of what we're trying to expand upon. We're trying to move from that one-dimensional experience that people are having on a transactional level and really build in education and like a social experience within the wallet, because we think you can capitalize on that within that kind of one transacting space. And the other unique take, I guess, we have for Clutch is just how we market it. It's how we market it and brand it. We are very inclusively marketed. We care about the majority of people that haven't yet kind of come into this space. And we've also been really reflective of what the traditional finance spaces look like. And as I mentioned before, predominantly dominated by, men, built by men. And, that's kind of been rooted in the history of how we've all come about. But I feel like now is a time for change, and women are coming into themselves and having a kind of wave of empowerment and ownership over their own kind of finances and life. And so a wallet and kind of crypto really falls into, I guess, that shift that we're seeing for them.
And I kind of forget, because now I've been in this space for so long, but like how tedious it was to send money to my Coinbase. I had all these problems with my bank to then send it to my MetaMask, check the address, make sure it's right. So how are you really building this product that's different? Like, what would be the user experience for opening up their wallet and really just utilizing Clutch Wallet?
Yeah, so you've kind of pointed out some of the pain points there, which is that initial onboarding of like coming into the wallet and being thrown this like idea of a seed phrase is something that's really foreign to people. And there's a lot of solutions that are building now around that. So Magic Link is a company that generates a link that still allows you to have private keys, but it allows you to sign in with an email address or a social sign-in. So that's a technology that we've adopted as part of our sign-in process. So it's removing the need for a seed phrase. I think the other part of like what we've been thinking about is just giving context in the onboarding experience when you're coming in. The opportunity for you to choose that you're a first-time user or that you're a kind of repeat user, and you don't necessarily need to go through a story arc of what you're doing and why you're doing it as you're coming into the wallet. Whereas we've created that kind of first-time user flow where it's like, hey, this is the world of Web3. It's kind of transactionally focused, but there are also opportunities to invest in NFTs and join part of communities. This is a little bit about blockchain, and this is a little bit about the experience you're about to come into. And it's these kind of like little thoughtful user experiences that we're trying to build into the product that we think is what makes it very different to what is out there at the moment. On top of that, I think really just landing in the product as well and having features like educational content available and social experiences alongside of the transactional is where we're trying to position ourselves a little bit differently. And then in terms of winning market share, we have like the ability for you to connect all of your Ethereum-based wallets into Clutch. And so you have one unique view of all of your assets. You can see the value of those, and you can kind of manage it in more of a one vision instead of having to dip in and out of different wallet products as well.
Mm-hmm. So taking a step back, and I just want to ask you, like, how is it? How is being a founder? Everyone kind of talks about this roller coaster. I definitely feel the roller coaster. You have like really good days where you feel like, oh my God, this is going to be $1 billion business. And then you have days where you're like, oh, like I can't afford to pay our staff in like 2 months and we're screwed. And that's like a real experience that you have. And I remember hearing about that and thinking like, it's a bit traumatic, but there's just so many little things that can go wrong or that can change so momentarily that really impact you. I think the market changing at the moment has been, a really significant one of those. It felt like we were building into this really hot market and a bull run, and people were getting really excited. And so building a cryptocurrency wallet for a group of women
And you know, people that were first time users to Web3 seemed like it was such a great time. And now all of a sudden you have this, you know, pretty big pullback from the market and negative sentiment around what's been happening in the world of crypto, and also just generally what's happening on like a macro scale of the economy. And that's like a massive hit in the face. So I think at the moment I'm feeling a bit like winded from the news of the market and trying to figure out like what's next, what's the strategies, what do we need to focus on, what's going to kind of get us through this time period. And that's been really challenging. And I will say as well, like going from the world of banking and finance where you work your way into like a really safe, secure salary, you get to a point in your life where you're like late 20s to then go straight back into kind of bootstrap mode where you're using your savings. Like I used a lot of my crypto investments to fund the early stages of this business. And then you're paying yourself that like scarecrow salary of just what you can to get by. And because it's your baby, you feel like you want to invest the money in everything else other than yourself. So the scarcity mindset that you live in, you know, that affects your experience. It affects your day to day, how you spend money, you know, what events you're attending, whether or not you're going to have a car. Like it affects all of those kind of decisions. So I think that has been a challenging part of it that I wasn't really ready for in terms of like lifestyle change.
And was there any moment, whether recently or when you first started, where you were like so close to just giving in the towel? You're like, I'm going to go back to that corporate life. Like founder life just isn't for me. Market's awful. Like somebody else can make this. Like it's just not for me.
I think so. I have like the thoughts that this is not, like I get nervous that this isn't going to work. And I definitely had that when I was fundraising. So we started fundraising late November last year. And I think after 2 months, we'd only closed 30K. And I'd used a fair bit of money, like my own personal money at that point, and I was having to make like long-term commitments around my rent, and I was feeling like the pressure, like very personally. And then in terms of like the business, we weren't able to actually start building the technical component of it. We had like community building, we had brand building, we had like the ideas forming, we were doing research with our customers, but we couldn't actually start working on the product because we couldn't raise the funds to hire the developers. And so it was at that point, I'd spent a month in New York with a group called Launch House, which was like a really awesome house that kind of helped you incubate your idea and helped you with funding and all of that. And they gave me like lots of great introductions, and it just wasn't landing with a lot of those investors at that point. And so I think after like 50 VC meetings that I'd taken over those 2 months, with like majority no's and 30K in the bank, of which some was already spent on like our first hire and not much being built, I was like, oh, I need to like figure out what's next. And I don't know what that is because I'm so attracted to what I'm building that I don't want to do anything else.
So I want to take a step back. So you met your co-founder. You guys decided like, hey, Clutch Wallet's the idea. I'm going to be a founder. I'm going to go all in. How much money did you decide, if you feel comfortable being like, hey, this is how much money I want to put into the product. This is what I feel comfortable with, to start building out the PowerPoint, the deck, and whatever you did to get that first kind of MVP to then go raise some funding?
Totally. I think the money cost, it's an interesting one. It's not so much on like the building at that point. And the reason I say that is because the beauty of James and I working together so early was that he had such an incredible like design, product operations background. And then I had this like front facing kind of community marketing sales. And so combining those two things together meant that like what we did have to start hiring for was the dev. And so it was very close to like, okay, are we going to use like how much of our personal funding we're going to use to make this like first hire, and should we even do that before we get like some commitment from funds that they're even invested into this? And so I think we started to tip some of our money in, which might have been like 5K each, to basically start covering the dev cost alongside of our first check, which was 30. But really the personal money was going to like, hey, I'm no longer in a business. I'm not getting paid a salary. So like everything to do with like my life, travel, software, like that we're paying for needs to be covered by us as well. So that, I guess that was like the other cost that was coming in that early.
Yeah, I feel like you don't even think about it. You're like, yeah, I put in 5K, but I also gave up a salary. I'm like living off of nothing, barely eating. Like people forget that like the actual value that you're giving up, it's also a cost as well.
Totally. And I think like as that went on as well, like, and as the funding like was kind of slowly coming in, it was like, oh, I'm like having to just keep covering like my personal costs. And that's when you start going like, what do I need? Like, and you really, really strip back And I think the point that you get to in doing that is you create such a strong scarcity mindset that it actually pushes you into like success, because it's like, oh, I don't have a car. I'm paying, small amounts of money for food. I'm not really experiencing much else other than my business. This isn't really comfortable. It's not the life that I necessarily want to be living right now. And so like, what can I do to get myself out of this? And that pushes you to work pretty hard.
Yeah, really have 50 VC meeting to get told no 50 times. 49.
Yes.
Yeah, so when you guys came up with the idea to when you started pitching the VCs, like what was that time frame?
That was quick. And I think it was quick because James has previously had VC experience, and it was like one of the best things you can do is just to start having conversations and getting feedback on like market sentiment, what people are feeling, and like building relationships with people so you can start sharing your development so they can see it as you're growing. It's like when you're pitching VCs, if they've never met you before, then they're wanting to get to know you. It's a relationship. And so they want to see how you work. They want to see what you can achieve. And so we kind of went out with this, like, it's hilarious to even look at what the logo looked like, what the pitch deck looked like at that point. But that was the starting point. It was just like an idea on a page, and we started talking to people about that idea on a page. And then a month went by and there was like a full-fledged pitch deck. There was a website. There was like, 700 people that had filled out a questionnaire. And it was like, oh, okay, hang on. Now we've seen like significant development in a month. And then we started actual fundraising conversations, which is like, we're actually opening this round and we want to raise money.
So then you had those 50 conversations. One person said yes. You have 30K in the door. And then what happened?
Okay, so actually as well, like this is one of the war stories that we have. One of our funds said yes. And then actually like there was like issues with their LP that then said like no. And so like there was like a yes, and we were like, oh, we're closed, we're done. And then it was like, no, actually we can't do this anymore. And like that was, a really challenging situation for them. It was a really challenging situation for us. And there were other checks that were reliant on like a lead or like a core kind of investor. And so yeah, the experience of like feeling like we'd closed and then having to go back out to market. And when you go back out to market, it's like you have to organize the meetings, you have to have your first one, then you have to have your second one. Mentally that's going to be another like month to 6 weeks when you actually look at the process if you're going through it in like the normal way. So that was at the end of like 2 months of no's, and then we thought we had a yes, and then we had like another kind of 2 weeks of going through it, and then they came back to us and were like, no, we've changed our like processes internally and we want to invest in this business. So that was like a wonderful win. But I remember at that point I'd actually gone back home to Australia. Like I couldn't afford to pay rent in the US anymore. I went back home to Australia. I was taking my VC calls at 3 a.m. in Australia time because that was when New York was waking up. And when I got like the yes, my parents were like so happy. And then I had the no, and they were like, are you okay? Like everyone was like tiptoeing around me in the house because they could tell that I was just like on the verge of a nervous breakdown.
Oh my God. I would probably be the happiest person alive.
It was bad, but then it was great. It was bad, and then it was great. And I was like, okay, this is this roller coaster. This is the thing. Like you feel like it's not going to work. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh great, we're building this thing. Let's go.
Especially if you're in a VC call and like you're up at 3 a.m. and then there's like, no, sorry, you're like, I could have been sleeping. Like I could have been dead asleep. Like this is pointless. I'm wasting my life. Like, so that definitely sounds absolutely so hard. And do you feel like there was a bigger challenge being a woman who was trying to raise money in venture capital, and then also a woman trying to raise money in venture capital in Web3?
Yeah. So a lot of the conversations I had, I would say in that like 50 were probably like 70% were male, and the other 30 were women funds, or where women were like present in the calls. And I definitely had a lot more success in terms of second calls, and even just like how the conversation flowed with women. That's not to say that, we had some really good calls with men as well, but like if I zoom out and I look at like the data of like who invested in us and who organized second calls and who got what we were building, like it was majority women. And so I shifted my strategy, which was like after trying to hit up a lot of the traditional blockchain funds and groups and not having success there, I went, okay, why am I doing this? Like, let's just go to like women focused funds and speak to them. And I think this is part of the thesis that a lot of these funds share, which is like women aren't getting invested in. People like to invest in what they know, what they get along with, what resonates with them, what makes sense to them, what products relate to them. And so when you don't have women making those decisions at the investment stage, then, you know, it's impacting who's getting invested in. And so, yeah, I think there was like a part of me that did feel it at that point of like, okay, we're not getting success here. So like I need to start speaking to like more women focused funds.
Mm-hmm. And were there any specific questions that you got being a woman in the space trying to raise money, or where you actually noticed like, wow, like, yes, I'm a woman, but I know what I'm doing and I'm confident in the product that I'm doing?
I tell you what, I struggle to understand the difference between people's reactions because of my background in like more marketing social versus actually being like a woman. So yeah, there was like a VC I was on a call with, and we were positioning our wallet as like a smart contract wallet at one point. We were trying to tease out the idea that there were other kind of products we were going to build into this, and it had multi-functionality, you know, based off of what smart contracts could do. And so when the slide came up, and this is a good blockchain fund that's been around for a while, and the person that was speaking with me said, I'm really curious. And like the tone went condescending. He said, can you define a smart contract for me? And I didn't really like understand. I remember having this moment on the call like, oh shit, am I talking to like a consumer fund and not a blockchain fund? Like, oh, I went into this with the wrong mindset. Like I should have pulled up the other deck where we don't speak about smart contracts as much because it's going to confuse the person. And so, but then I explained what a smart contract was, and he was like, okay, cool, that's good. And I got off the call and I was like, oh, he didn't think I understood what I was pitching. Like that's what happened just then. And I think that was like, I got frustrated after that. I didn't notice it in the moment because I was kind of confusing myself, but that was definitely one experience. And then I've definitely had some male investors that were angels that asked me about when I was having children and what my relationship status was, because that would impact their investment. And you know what? They were actually upfront about calling out why they were asking. Like they bluntly said, I don't invest in like women that are thinking about having children soon because it means that they're going to whatever the assumption was they made about women founders who have families. And so that was like a shocking statement to hear. And that was like a hard question as well, because I didn't think that would ever be part of the line of questioning as to me building the business.
And how do you feel about that question? Like, were you like, okay, I kind of understand it once he gave the background? Were you like, wow, fuck that. I'm going to work hard on this, whether I have a kid soon or not?
I actually remember sitting like in my car afterwards and thinking like, damn, I haven't like thought about this enough. If this is like people's perception and this is like really challenging, like I need to think about this more with like my life timeline. And I think when he explained like the experiences he has had, I like empathized a little bit. But at the same time, I've worked around so many women that have families, that have newborns, that have kids, that I just think it's a really exclusionary way of like wanting to invest in people, and it's a way of like keeping women out of this space and being able to build businesses and generate money for themselves. And
it's so hard because like men have newborns, like they're just as much responsible for a kid as women. Maybe they're not the one obviously having labor, but like you would never ask a man that. Understandable, but like I would never even think to ask a woman that either. So it's interesting to hear, and I don't know how to react because I see it, right? Like I see both sides where I'm like, okay, like that does make sense. Like maybe you will have a kid. A lot of like women do end up being the mom, being home all the time, and stay home. Like I get that, but it's also like, okay, you're also working so hard day in and day out right now. Like why are you thinking about the future and what could be, and what I understand is on timeline for women, but I just wouldn't expect that to be in the conversation initially.
No, totally. And yeah, I think it's like if they're making the decision to get on a call with you, then like that's the decision there. Like they're committing to building this business. So like what they're doing later in terms of families and stuff, it's challenging for me to understand how it like completely makes sense to be asking that at that point.
Mm-hmm. So you raised a round of funding. How much runway did that give you?
Okay, so we raised a round. I think we closed in March. It gave us until, where are we at? So first of all, it gave us until like September, October. Then the market started to change. And so we had to change how we were spending money. And we've now extended that runway until December.
Okay, so what's the plan now? Like, what do you guys have since then? What have you used the money for? Where are you guys at?
Now we are rapidly starting our next round. because of the market conditions, our seed is opening imminently. We're starting to send out introductions this week. We have a pitch deck ready. We have our data room ready. We have all those things ready. And there was like this balance between, is it too early, because we've just launched our product. But I think we're very like comfortable with the product that we've launched and the ability that we've shown to build something kind of like from March, which is what, it's like 3 months. We've built a fully functional like wallet with all of the like basic functions that other wallets have, and then we've added in experiences around kind of education, like some social stuff, and I think we've done a lot in that kind of time period. So now what we're kind of looking at is expanding the experience. So expanding the kind of social experience, expanding the product offering over to mobile and web browser. And that's the kind of pressure and feedback we're getting right now from the groups that we're partnering with and our customers, which is like, I want this on my phone. Like I want a mobile. I want to interact with this content on my phone on the go, especially if you're going to start rolling like more social content into it. And then from a partnerships perspective, they want the browser extension because they want to push their users to like mint with the product, and also to be able to purchase the NFTs off of Web3 platforms like OpenSea. So that's kind of the next stage, I guess, for what we're raising for. Was there another question you asked?
How many users do you currently have on the platform?
So we opened last week and we have 1,000.
Hey, let's go. Did you have a wait list, or you just decided, hey, we're going to push it out?
So we've just pushed it out. We actually haven't activated our beta list yet. We're doing that this week. So we've just kind of been testing, getting some feedback. This is a challenge I'd have, which is like, we have all these pockets of different audiences and users, and trying to figure out like at what point to activate them with regards to the product is something that I get like a little bit perfectionistic about, in that, especially for TikTok, right? There's an audience that we've accumulated there of people that are interested in the product. They're new users to the Web3 space. The future vision I have for this product is not where we're at right now. And so it's like this push-pull of like, do we onboard the people that have come through that channel now with the experience, or do we try and activate like more locally within our kind of network? And that's kind of where we've been discussing more recently, but we've decided to activate with the beta list. We're feeling comfortable with like the onboarding experience and kind of how we can put people into Web3 with our product at the moment, and hopefully kind of just keep them captivated as we build from there.
Yeah, and you mentioned TikTok, and I want to touch on that a little bit. So obviously we're in this creator economy, and it's so important. I mean, it helps me being a VC to reach out to companies because I have this following on Twitter. So right away it gives me like the credibility, like, okay, hey, she has this following, she knows what she's doing. Then I see it as a founder where you're actually able to talk about your background, talk about blockchain, talk about Web3, and then market your product. So how has that been for you? Working on TikTok and then also getting this following for Clutch Wallet?
Yeah, it was along with like, I guess the idea that we started with last year, the kind of next port of call was using TikTok to validate the idea. And we basically thought if we didn't get validation, then we would kind of pivot the idea as to what we were building. But we got instant validation when I kind of told this story about what my experience was in Web3 and what I was building for. And so as soon as we got that validation, that was kind of when my platform started growing. And we recognized that every piece of content that went out that did well would then result in beta list signups and people joining our communities. And so the more that my audience grew, the more opportunities we had with partnerships, the more opportunities I had to speak at conferences and events. And it's just been this like insane funnel that has built up for our business that, to be honest, I haven't given enough attention for like the last month because we've just been in such hectic like build mode and launching. But now that it's out there, like that is going to be my strategy while we're fundraising, is that I will be actively pushing TikTok so that we're building that audience as we're kind of having those fundraising conversations, because it really helps to have the first one and come back and be able to demonstrate like growth on audience or beta signups or whatever it is.
And you also make the best videos.
Thank you. It's definitely a process of just like constant iteration, and I definitely have like terrible imposter syndrome. So I will like sit there and pick at what I've put together for way too long, and I might do it completely and spend like an hour and a half on it, which kills me. And I know that if my investors heard me saying these metrics out loud, they'd be like, you're not focusing on what's important. But I'll make a video for an hour and a half, look at it and be like, nah, burn the whole thing down and need to start again. So there is this definitely like this content creation process that I'm trying to refine so that it fits into my business schedule, and it's like actually seeing the returns that we want it to see. We're also trying to build like from the TikTok content, we're trying to build that content into our other content spokes. So the TikTok content gets used across Instagram. For example, when I do like a weekly wrap, that weekly wrap gets turned into an email drip that gets sent out to our signed up users. So we're trying to be clever about how we're thinking about content so that it kind of funnels out from TikTok and has more use cases.
And I agree with you when you just said that you'll spend like an hour plus on video. And that's why I have trouble with TikTok, because I think on like Twitter, I post a picture with my NFT. Sometimes like majority of the time I'm behind a closed wall. Like you don't see my face. I write whatever I want. If it doesn't do well, I delete it. But then when you go to TikTok, I overthink every little thing. How I look, how I talk. You have to hear your voice go off. So how did you really build a following? Like I struggle so much on TikTok because I can't hear myself speak. Sometimes I like overthink everything I write, feel like people know it more. It's just a platform that I haven't been able to understand and get myself to do, because I think, as you mentioned, like I'm too much of a perfectionist and I really just overthink all the content that I put out.
Totally. I think one of like the realizations I had was there was a piece of content that did like my best performing piece of content, which I think might have 2.8 million views, was me standing in my bathroom in front of a tweet that was put out by a crypto, I think actually he's a finance kind of commentator. And he said, if you invested $1,000 into these different cryptocurrencies, this would be the return. And I was like, oh, that's a cool tweet. And I hadn't really like done this style of content before. And it was on a Sunday afternoon. I had like no makeup on. I hadn't like done my hair. I had nothing. And I just remember I put like a headband on, and then I stood in front of the tweet. And so when you do that, it like does that cutout thing for yourself. And I was like, oh, I look like a thumb, but whatever. Like this is just a random piece of content I'm just going to test with. I went to the movies, I came back, and all of a sudden there's like hundreds of thousands of views, and there is hundreds of comments about my forehead, about how I look, about the fact that I'm like who I am and what would I know. It was just like horrific commentary on my TikTok that I've never had before in my life.
Yep.
And so that was like quite an experience around just like building a tough skin. But to answer your question, what that taught me was that like all of this like perfectionism and time that I spend like sometimes planning and writing and researching and then like doing the takes over and over and over again, like isn't always the best way to deliver the content. I think sometimes it does work if you're doing like a deep dive or analysis, but there are pieces of content that just work for being like short, cute, on the fly, and you're not overthinking it. And when you're not overthinking it, you're acting naturally. And that's actually what resonates with people. And there's something that people say on TikTok, which is like, it's where people go to like create, like be real and create content. And I really feel that because it's so exposing and everyone kind of just accepts you when you are exposed and you're real and you're authentic. I went and did a pitch the other day in Canada at a conference and got down to like the top 3, didn't win, posted a TikTok about it and was like, didn't win. This was like kind of challenging for me because I got to this last point and I like had posted about it. And this like public building experience is like a lot. And the support from people from that was just like really overwhelming and really lovely. And so again, just like those compounding experiences for me, which is that like tapping out of that perfectionism and that feeling of wanting to portray a certain type of founder, CEO level of success isn't like always necessary and isn't necessarily what succeeds on that platform.
Yeah, but it's also like crazy thing, like that's what people focus on. So have you had any other kind of negative experiences, or was that your main one? You're like, you know what, like I could get through this. Like I knew I didn't have on makeup. Even if you didn't have on makeup, who the hell cares? Like you're doing you. Like
yeah. So, I mean, yeah, that visual experience and the visual feedback was like a lot. It actually it was like, there was so many comments about how big my forehead is. And then it got taken and it got put on like a really big Instagram account. And then my friend sent me that like a couple of weeks later. And like, it was the same thing on Instagram too. I'm like, Mom, Dad, like you guys never raised this thing with my forehead so big. I didn't realize. It was hilarious. I had to laugh. But after that, there was definitely some controversial feedback and like discussions around me talking about what I was building for. And like, I've never said that I'm just building this product for women. I've said that I'm building it with them in mind, that they are a customer base when it comes to like financial products and investing that often aren't marketed to and considered. And so I also had this like background in banking where I've seen like neobanks and the way that they've been able to market themselves and attain kind of like customer bases because there is more niche marketing towards them and building products for them. And so I tried to explain like that view of this is the way I'm thinking about it. This isn't necessarily like a wallet for women, even though people are positioning it that way. It's like building with women in mind, but we're also thinking about like the unbanked and first time users. And yes, the design and aesthetic is going to be more feminine. And yes, we're going to have some features in there that maybe like your traditional like hardcore crypto devs aren't going to be interested in because they're in this world, and first time users, in particular women coming in, are going to want like a more social experience, or they're going to want to invest in the types of NFT projects that are built on a certain type of blockchain that is more environmentally sustainable. And these are like some of the trends that we're noticing as women are coming into this space. And so trying to communicate that was challenging. And there was definitely like big arguments between men and women in the comment sections, men basically being like, why do you need to build a pink wallet? Or like, why do women need like a special wallet? And women defending the idea and being like, no, I genuinely want to get into this industry because this thing is called Clutch and it's like being built by a woman. That's like, that's a reason for me to basically start using this product. And so that was like hard to navigate. I found like people were getting very emotional, very critical. And as like the content creator, you feel a level of like, I maybe need to step in, or I need to like, do I need to delete comments, or, you know, if they're being really nasty, or like, what's my opinion on all of this? Because people are kind of looking at me to respond. So that was definitely a challenge.
Which all that feedback though is also super helpful for you as a founder. So I guess if you have any tips or advice, what would it be for somebody wanting to really start out on TikTok? Because I feel like it's had such a big impact on you, obviously positively as well, like building your business.
Totally. It's been, if anyone's like, what is like the one thing I should do as like a founder? That's honestly where I send them. I say, go and share your thesis around what you're building on TikTok and tell your story authentically. I think the other piece of advice is like how long it can take. Sometimes it can take, you know, a couple of weeks or less time if you create a piece of content that lands. It's really hard to know what's going to land. And so it is like a test and trial process. I'll have you know that for like, I started creating TikToks, but I was like dancing around in my room in COVID, back in COVID. And so from then I went from like doing my little dancey dances into like trying to create crypto content that still wasn't landing, and just feeling like, damn, I can't master this thing. Like it's really hard. It's been like a year and a half of me trying to do this. It's not going to work. And then I think landing on the idea and being so passionate about the idea is maybe what like resonated when I told the story about what I wanted to build. So yeah, the persistence and just also maybe the removal of perfectionism, and then just acknowledging like the power of the platform.
And is there a certain amount of videos that you recommend founders or any type of influencer that really wants to have a presence on TikTok post? I also heard like if your 2 videos don't work, like your first 2 or 3, then the algorithm basically says, nope, your videos aren't good, and then doesn't share it anymore. But you didn't seem to find that as well.
No, I mean, to be honest, yeah, I had like a year. Oh, actually, no, what I will say is that I had a different TikTok, and then I created a second account when I started like more of the crypto focus. But even still, like those early pieces of content didn't get traction until I had like the one that did well. And so up until that point, I think most of my stuff was getting like 300 views and a couple of likes. Like it was nothing to write home about. So I know that like that initial video or couple of videos, if they don't get traction, like it is going to be a bit of a challenge to like, you have to really create content that people are going to start commenting on or liking and engaging with to kind of build up that momentum from there, for sure.
Yeah. So I think even with the girls table, it's easy for me to really just want to quit, right? Like I have my following on Twitter. Now I'm trying to do this podcast. Like it's hard. Like it's similar to just you being a founder. Like things are hard. You're like, all right, I don't know if this is even worth it. I'm wasting my time, wasting my friends' times, parents, the listeners I have. So it's like, how do you stay motivated each day?
For real. No, it's such a good point. And you're out there doing like a lot of the different channels as well. Like this with Twitter and work it's a lot. There's a couple of things. I think maybe like one of the sayings I heard recently, which has like really stuck with me, is do things that don't scale when you're starting out. And it's something that I keep kind of reminding myself of, which is like around activities and, you know, like stuff that I think that maybe isn't like getting a really drastic response or result to begin with, is the stuff that I need to like start off by doing and just get some level of traction. I guess it's kind of like thinking about an idea in the version of an MVP. So there's that I keep kind of reminding myself of. And then honestly, this is like a bit extreme, but I think for me, the way that I stay motivated is I've created such scarcity around me in that I don't have the car. I'm not like taking the wage I want to take. There's like a lot of people that are relying on our business now to succeed because we have staff, and I'm building publicly. I have like a public face around building this business, which means I'm responsible, or at least people are like checking in to see how it's going, and it's all, out in the open. And those pressure levels is like the thing that keeps me really bloody motivated, because it's pressure. Yeah.
Yeah, and one of the things I want to ask, and usually that I love ending on, is like, who could you sit next to? If it could be anybody at the girls' table, but I really want to phrase it as like, who has been your biggest mentor right now to really help you raise the money, keep going every day, that you'd love to kind of have next to you, that's had the most effect on you?
Oh God, that's a hard one. I mean, there's definitely like two people that I would love to sit next to, but I don't know them, and they haven't been my mentors. One of them is Evan from Disco Protocol, and the other is Melton. I just think that they're two like voices in the Web3 space that are women that have just absolutely like killed it, and that I respect and listen to a lot. So they're two people that I want to sit next to. In terms of like mentors and people that have, that have like helped me go. I don't know if this is lame, but like, the co-founder relationship I have with James is something that we've been kind of building for quite some time now, and just having like a person next to me that is my co-founder but also is like a mentor. He's a fair bit older, he's like built businesses and sold them, and has just been such an incredible support in kind of helping me to take this co-founder and CEO position in this business. And so I think that's probably like the mentor that's been pushing me along for sure.
We'll accept it. And then any last minute advice for the listeners? And then also, where can people follow you to really just follow along on your journey?
Last piece of advice. I guess I like the saying that's like, what you focus on expands, whether that's like what you're interested in building, or just like the energy you're giving to something, whether it's like, acknowledging if this is like a good result I'm getting from this or not. So that's probably like the advice that I have. And then in terms of where people can find me, on Twitter, Bec Jones, and then on TikTok, crypto Bec _
And she posts the best videos.
Posts regularly.
Awesome, Bec. This was so much fun. Thank you so much for coming on today. I really can't wait to continue to watch you, follow you along, see you in LA, and also just see what you continue to build with Clutch. So thanks so much for coming today.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much for being in continuous support. I really appreciate it.
Of course. Bye.